So welcome to today's deep dive in modern data platforms. So it will be around a 45-minute session. I'll try to make it as unboring as possible. We'll go through plenty of practical examples. It will be very actionable. There'll be plenty of resources to help you out on your own initiatives. But today we're talking about initiatives, transformations around data platforms and everything that goes into its success. So without further ado, then let's look into the agenda. Will be a short introduction. Who am I? Who are we? What we're going to cover, what we won't going to cover. Connecting the dots, so problems and solutions. Where do we come from? Why do we do these things? How do we get that business buy-in? We're going to see also what we mean by business buy-in. We'll go through concrete real-world examples. So we're actually going to look at one use case, how this is achieved, basically. Lessons from the field. So far, we have covered what to do. We will also look at what not to do. And finally, how to start. So this is very actionable, very resource-oriented. We're talking about checklists. We're talking about canvases. We're talking about tools that you can grab and use in your own initiatives. Finally, a space for Q&A, and that's a wrap. So moving on, starting with the information about me. So I'm Fernando. It's been about 15 years in data for me, pretty much in data everything. You see engineering, visualizations, architecture, pretty much everything over the course of a long career. But now more recently, more in touch with strategy, architecture, and governance. I lead the business unit to data at Solita, and that's the unit that takes on these and other challenges. Right, so very, very briefly, just so that we are all on the same page and so that we have a clear view of what will happen, what will not happen, so that the expectations are correct. So we will focus on why we move to these platforms or why we start these transformation initiatives. It doesn't need to be per se, I'm moving into a modern data platform. I'm doing a data initiative, whichever it may be. It's completely applicable. How we can ensure the business buy-in, and by this we mean two things. So the business buy-in of the business stakeholders around me, so what we generally call the business, right? If we sit in IT, we consider the rest as the business, and everyone who is above me, who is responsible for unlocking budget, who is responsible for putting a check on my initiatives, on what moves forward or what doesn't. So we're talking about buy-in for the wider business of the company, and we're talking about upper management buy-in as well. That will be the focus today. What we won't see is data platforms in depth. So we'll go very, very briefly into this. How do they look like? How to architecture, our recommendations, our best practices for different kinds of scenarios, be it greenfield, lift and shift. There's a myriad of reasons to do this, and all of those can be found in a crash course that is available in the Docs tab. So here in this webinar. Right. So who are we? We are Solita. We are a company that started out in the Nordics, in Finland, and operates in over 10 countries in Europe right now. And you will see that whatever we do is related to data. I tend to say it from the bottom to the top. So you see there the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, software development, connectivity, data and AI, cloud design strategy. So in fact, we were created in 1996, and it's always connected to data. This is the play on words, what we call connected data. So we usually have two sides of the coin. We have data being created in operational systems. We have data being moved between operational systems, so what we call connectivity and integration. And then they move to more analytics and long-term analysis, and that's what we call the data part of it. So if we look from bottom to the top, we have software development on the operational side. We have connectivity integrating the operational side. Then we have data and AI on the analytics side. The cloud is today the foundation of all of this. And then we have design and strategy. You should read that design as business design and business strategy. So usually that's what leads everything else. That is very, very briefly about us. These are some of our customers. Won't pick any to stand out. It's just to give a good overview on what we as Solida cover. That's us. And let's dive into the problem then. Where does this stem from? If we're talking about data initiatives, why do they start? How do they start? Right. So there's a myriad of reasons for these transformation initiatives. The low quality is a good example, causing a lot of frustration in the business. The lack of clear ownership causes a lot of frustration as well, usually on who to ask what, right? I have a problem or my KPI is not correct. Who am I going to ask? And often the answer is IT, and often IT does not own that data, right? Maybe they own the calculation before you see it, and that is already a stretch. They own the implementation. The KPI itself is held by the business, of course. Then we have complexity. Increasing complexity is a problem. It is a cognition problem. It is not just a problem because things get more complex. It's a problem because teams are human, and humans tend not to cope so well with complexity indefinitely. So it's easy to become the bottleneck, and it's easy to slow down as the complexity rises up. Finally, the long time to market. So just a real life example, we have a customer that had time to market of 4 months for a report. We even have one customer that had 6 months for a report. And I'm not talking about a new report with new data. I'm talking about, here's my report, this KPI is wrong, could you change this calculation? That would be 6 months. So it's absolutely unacceptable. Now, you notice that I left the very first one for the last, so the ever-increasing cost. And the problem is not really the cost. And I left it for last because it is so frequent that we really need to take a second look of why this happens this way. The problem is not really the cost increasing. The problem is the cost increasing exponentially. And that's what we're going to take a look into. Usually this is what happens. This is complexity and cost. Let's focus on those two lines that you see on the screen. You see that complexity grows linearly across time. Usually platforms grow, or the data, the models, they grow with the business, and they grow with the initiative, right? We incorporate more and more of the business into these analytical platforms. But if the complexity is growing linearly, why is my cost not growing linearly? It's growing exponentially. And this is the problem, is that every little bump on that cost curve is a new iteration. And in the beginning, it was really fast and it was really cheap to make a change. Hey, I want something this in my report. Yeah, sure, I'll grab the data from here, yada, yada. It is completed. It was fast. Once my models grew quite a lot and my analytical platform is complex enough, any little change will require centralization and normalization. This normalization and the complexity of these models that are all encompassing are usually the issue. So we humans don't scale indefinitely, so it's easy to see that at some point a team will become a bottleneck, be it due to a backlog or be it due to complexity. And this is not something we can manage. Everybody knows the experience. The tool was well received, the platform was well received, everybody's happy, and all of a sudden, everybody's unhappy because it doesn't move as fast, because the releases are not as often, because we somehow at some point got into some technical debt, and now we want to do technical releases that don't change anything for the business, and we start over. And that's what we don't want. We want to move into something like this. So this is the example from data product design or data product thinking. The complexity is linear, the complexity per data product, right? The complexity of one data product will always be one data product, and the cost will be the number of data products. So if we are starting to segregate things, then we can quickly see how we can normalize these curves, make sure that they are linear, and even if the complexity of the system grows, the complexity of every piece of the puzzle remains the same, which keeps the cost down quite a lot. Right, so looking at data platforms and modern data platforms, of course, this is a little bit how it looks like. Of course, you know this, they don't look so different from traditional platforms, but how you manage them and how you govern them can make the difference in those cost curves. So this is, of course, AWS, and this is the sister on the side of Microsoft Fabric. Again, nothing special here. We're not going to dive into detail. It's all about business buy-in today. So why do we start? Why? Who pushes us to start? Right, and those are the drivers, and we have several possibilities here. Overhead is one of them. I'm tackling the center. You will see why in a bit, as I want to finish again on number one. So overhead is one. So the cost is a problem, and is a problem that happens far too often for us to ignore. Acquisitions are a little bit of a forced change. So we usually have to normalize things across companies when we are either acquired or we acquire a company. And then we have strategic initiatives of modernization. Companies that say we're modernizing, we're moving away from our standard legacy operational tools, we're going to have new tools. Great. Everything that is data that sources from there now needs to be reshaped as well. And we all know what happens if we try to, we'll just include it into legacy. Usually an alpha project starts, and then the alpha project has all eyes on it, and we hope that it won't be disastrous. And finally, we have business. Now, this is not always the driver, but there's an important piece of this, which is if the business is driving it because they are frustrated, because they want something different, they want something better, they want something faster, be it in tools or processes. Once the business is driving, we are tempted to assume, I don't need to worry about business buy-in. They're driving it. And this is true to some extent, right? But the truth is that even if business started it, you will need to do some convincing for other departments, other areas of business, other stakeholders, and ultimately upper management as well. So buy-in is not something we can escape from, no matter who drove the initiative, no matter who pushed it forward. And so let's take a look how to get it right. How do we ensure that we have that business buy-in? So if business is driving it, usually you can see there in red, the bottom corner piece of the puzzle, the customer experience. That's usually how they get to drive it. And the pressure goes into this data and IT team. So everything else still needs to be managed. It's just a direct line there from business to IT that tempt us to think, hey, we're pretty good. It's the business that's asking for this. The business won't do the rest, actually, and the initiative is most likely going to be driven by the data team, the IT team. It is at the end an IT data initiative. So remember that business buy-in is both stakeholders and upper management, and that whatever is the driving piece, you need to account for everything else. So if the customer is the driving piece, that's great. You don't need to account for that little bit. You need to account for all the rest. If the vision and strategy is the driving piece, now you will need to do some convincing for the business itself. So there's always a bunch of pieces that are interacting, and no matter who's driving, this needs to be all-encompassing. That's the full idea that we're trying to get across. And how do we tackle this? What are the recommendations to get that business buy-in? We've been building up a little thing, but so right now we need to consider 4 different axes: strategy, stakeholders, plan, and finances. We're going to dive into each one individually, and we're going to see in practice what that represents. So this is just before the use case. You're going to see it really in action, how we manage to achieve it. Right. So Business strategy. That's something that's the first axis to consider. My initiative, is it aligned with business objectives? And my initiative, does it speak in business terms, in business language? Those are two primary things and two real world examples here. So one from this customer that I just mentioned, that was 6 months for a change in a report. We're talking about a logistics company, a very large logistics company with hundreds of thousands of employees. So when we take a look at operating across whole continents, when we take a look at data initiatives or data requests, it's pretty easy to see that a centralized data team will be the problem. At this scale, humans will be the problem. So they had a vision. They wanted to develop a scalable global processes, and they ensure that they keep their leadership on the market. But the key word here is scale. They want to scale. It is already huge. They want to scale. So the data initiative would be, not just would be, was, this is a real life use case, a distributed data delivery through data products and a self-service platform. We won't really dive into what is the self-service platform today, but we're talking about distribution and removing the bottlenecks of a centralized data team, which is absolutely in line with the strategic objective of scaling. They cannot scale otherwise. That's a very good argument. And then we have also an example now from industry chemical company. We'll speak about it also further in detail. And I want you to focus on the language that is there in brown, fail to scale. And it's very understandable for the business. Unless you do this, you're not going to be able to scale as you want. This is a very strong argument. So we're not talking about, and this happens frequently, when you ask the question, people go into, yes, because I need to download that because this is, I need the data on my computer, and then I put some calculations. It's very complicated calculations. This doesn't tell me anything. But if I say the amount of manual processes make human the bottlenecks and you won't be able to scale, this is business language. So we need to ensure these two things. Whatever we are driving is in line with the strategy, and we can explain why we are driving it from the start in business language. Then we're considering stakeholder involvement, a piece that is so important. We are always tempted to say that it's even more important than anything else. It doesn't come first because strategy is still there and is still important. But this is really important, involving the business from the start. And I cannot tell you how many times we have faced customers that have data initiatives driven by IT teams, period. There's nothing else, and they were never involved or listened to. And this is a problem because at some point, they're going to be using it. And when they're using it, they will need to be on your side. There'll be frustrations, I guarantee you, and they will be more tolerant to those frustrations as well if they're on your side. They will understand the problems if they're on your side. So, of course, the question arises, what's a business stakeholder? Who should I call? Or who should I involve? And so we have here a real-life example. Once again, this is the mining industry. We won't go into this use case today, but it gives you a good idea. There again, I call your attention to key participants. And you will see that the names change a little bit. BU stakeholders, project sponsors, team lead, analytics managers. We have companies that have roles like ambassadors. All of these different namings don't matter. The responsibilities matter. So you will see more in depth what we mean by responsibilities and who we should involve from that real life use case. But just to give you the idea that IT needs to be a part of this, of course, but the managing teams, both up and down, should be, or up and to the side, should be there as well, right? So it's very, very often that we find sponsors and ambassadors, so the people that are really driving and are enthusiastic about use cases, in the operational teams. So we should, of course, we should not involve everyone and try to do workshops with 200 people either, but we can get a sample, and we can definitely get a sample per use case. So we don't need to involve everyone in the business, but we need to involve everyone who has a stake in it. The domains that are going to start first, the likely finance is always there, since they kind of funnel everything into their own KPIs. So it's easy to make the list, and there is a checklist also to get this prepared that we provide in this during this deep dive. Right, so that's stakeholder involvement, roadmap, and a plan. Try to convince anyone about any initiative without a plan. No one's going to buy it. So it's not just having the plan, it's having the plan in all the axes that are needed. And you see there augmented vision, value creation, humans in change, and tech landscape. We're going to see further also how this is done. Once again, you don't need to worry. We offer the roadmap template. You can fill it with your own details for your own initiative. All of this is made available to you as downloadables in the end. So make sure that you have a plan, and not just the plan, but have a first slice of the plan. And this is so important. I cannot stress this enough. It's not just, oh, I have a plan for 5 years. I have a plan for 5 years. Our first phase is 4 months, and it delivers an ROI of 200%. This is different. I want to hear more. Now I'm interested. So always have the plan, and always have the first phase plan. How can we deliver value fast, in usually just a few months? Don't go for 8, go for 3 or 4. And how can we make impact quickly? That's the science of getting the buy-in, and literally the science of successful implementations. And finally, this is equally important, and is usually coupled together with the roadmap, which is the financial business case. So calculate the ROI of the initiative, and calculate the ROI for that first phase. Very important. Now, this is, again, a real-life example. We created this for a manufacturing company. 2 things are important here. The first one, as always, we provide the sheet, the calculation sheet with parameters so that you can adapt. It is a little bit targeting on transformations for manufacturing. It is not incredibly difficult to adapt. I mean, a couple of lines need to be adapted if you have a different industry, but all the calculations, all the formulas, all the thinking behind it stays the same. So you can use it, we use it, and even more important that we use it is we provided this calculation, and the customer said, could I have the tool to calculate myself? I'll play with the parameters. And when they sent it back to us, still in the negotiation phase, still in the discussions about what can be implemented, how can it be implemented, they gave us back the sheet, and the sheet went from 200 something to what is now 513. And it turned out that if we have maintenance and predictive maintenance in the production line, if the production line stays down for 1 day, so has downtimes, not working for 1 day, we calculated the loss as a loss of 100,000, and turns out each line is 1 million a day. So once they influenced all the parameters, it came much, much higher than we actually thought and had initially predicted. Once again, the business knows the business. This is a good exercise. We always give the preliminary assessment, and the business revises and adapts what needs to be adapted. They know it better than anybody else. Right. So 4 axes to consider, but how do we cover all of this? This is going to take forever, right? So let's look into a real world use case where all of this was covered. I was covered in 3 days. Right, and we're going to go to this concrete real world example. So We're talking about a multinational chemical company operating all over the world in different areas of chemical expertise. They do a lot of research, and they do research continuously. So they're always researching, they're always producing, they're always putting products out. And they contacted us because they had lack of agility, they have bottlenecks, they had issues with their data pipelines, plenty of manual processes due to the specificity of the business. You can read it as complexity. And actually, it is so complex that whenever we were discussing, they mentioned this is done outside of IT by a data science that sits in the domain. So the main knowledge is really important in this case. And so since the data scientists need to be in the domains to work with the data, then you start challenging the whole centralized approach. Why do I have a team trying to get KPIs out? If finally it's too complicated for anyone to explain, and I need a data scientist here that downloads information and then uploads it again, and then now I can pick it up from the IT's point of view. It's not working. It's not working. Let's challenge the approach. Let's go distribute it. Let's give data products a chance. That was the driver here. Data products a chance. We have a vision. We know what we want to achieve. That's a good thing. Will it be successful? How do we convince upper management that this is a good idea? This is a bit of a weird initiative. Business is enthusiastic and wants to move that way. We're not sure if this is going to work out. This is going to be maybe a very large investment. How do we architecture things? We have never done distributed before. We're not sure if we can handle the tools. We're stuck. That's the story. We're stuck. We're stuck, and we need to get this done and fast before another cycle of research gets missed. We'll see why this is important. So we got together, we did a series of workshops. You're going to see which and how. These are a little bit the sample of deliverables. They are much more extended than this, of course. But basically, we got everyone in the room to make sure that we have alignment of perspectives, to make sure that we have a roadmap, we have a first phase roadmap. We can get all the information out in terms of what it needs, what is needed for this transformation to happen. Okay, so during 3 days, and just before during 3 days. So as a summary, we have a vision in place. We have the buy-in for the immediate business of the use cases we're going to start out. We have a strategy that is focused on, I want to make sure I succeed, and I want to make sure I have accelerators. I have experience with me. Management business case, financial business case still needs to be built. Experience is a little bit lacking when it comes to technology, but I want to achieve something of value, and I want to do it in the next 6 months. Finally, it was 4 months, but 6 months, let's say, they already had that vision of, we need to ace our first victory. And that's very important. So this is the adaptation. This is the 3 days. These are all the workshops that are ran. A couple of things to mention here. First, how recommended is a 2-day workshop. This is 3 days because they were so advanced we could move a little bit further, things that maybe would have been done already at the start of an implementation. And if you look at these 3 days, you see that there are sessions, there are slots in different colors. I want to bring your attention to the color red. Everything that is red is a session, so it's not really a workshop, and everything else that does not include any eating or breaking, that is a workshop. We ran really tens of workshops across these 3 days to get all the information out. We're going to see why. And if we take a look at day 1, there are 2 slots in bold, the use case presentation and the outcomes of data foundation. This is something that the customer, the organization itself, ran those sessions, right? They gave the introduction to everybody else. Everything else is about workshopping and facilitation. So going deeper, because we are quite advanced, and we're going to illustrate this diving a little bit. We won't cover every workshop of these sessions, of course. We're just looking at a sample that you can use in your own initiatives and pointing at things that are very actionable and things that are very needed, of high importance. And this is a good example. So getting stakeholders identified around the table and starting with problems. And why do we start with problems? Because it's very hard to ask someone, what do you want? And the answer will be, oh, everything, which means nothing, right? So if you ask, what's not going so well today, they will find 30 things. And if you ask, great, out of these 30, what are the priorities? These 3 are absolutely, if they were fixed, I would be so happy. Great. How would we fix them? Oh, we could do A, B, and C. That's your roadmap. So instead of starting out with, hey, what do we want to achieve? Terrible idea. But ask people what they are frustrated about, and then ask, hey, wouldn't life be awesome if you weren't frustrated about these things? Oh, yes, it would. Okay. How would we fix them? And when we look at this, what we call inhibitors, problems and limitations, if you will, when you look at this, we prompt, before the beginning of every cycle of workshop, we prompt people to think in terms of how this fits strategically for the organization, how or what are the problems with humans and change and culture. So we consider these different lenses of looking at the problem so that we really get out all of the information, not just the problem, but the problem from different perspectives and points of view. So we get something like this. So this is a real life use case from a chemical company, and you can see that plenty of post-its get turned around. By the way, a cycle of these is not longer than 1 hour. So a lot of information gets to be extracted if it's well facilitated in workshops. And so just to give you the full idea that you get different points of views, and then you just have to group them together, and they group them together for you. The business can look at what it wrote and go, oh, these 2 are the same. Oh yeah, you mentioned this. Yes, I also mentioned this. So part of it is personal and individual, and then part of it is a group discussion. You will land very, very soon and still inside that 1 hour with an aggregated view. And here in this aggregated outcome, some things are quite standard. You would probably find them in many, many organizations. You won't find the one in the center there in brown that's related to humans and change. And this is something very, very peculiar. The fear of negative evaluations. The fear of negative evaluations. They fear being judged on the results of the data itself. This is fantastic, because you went into a workshop to find issues, to find, well, what could we fix with technology? And finally, you know that people don't want to share their data. They want to hold it because these are research results. I'm a scientist that is driving the research, and I'm going to be judged on this. Did I do well? Did I not do so good? This is a problem. It's a cultural problem. And no matter what technology you put in place, whatever initiative you try to move forward, it may happen that in the end, your perfect platform is not used by anyone, not because it failed, because people don't want to share the information because of fear. This is clearly a humanistic issue. This is clearly a problem to be fixed culturally, and you wouldn't have found it if you hadn't gotten the business involved to begin with. And we see this a lot. IT professionals, IT leaders saying, we know what they want. We need to show them what we can do. Well, you will get a lot of buy-in if you figure out what are the cultural issues. And whenever you're changing something, there's a human somewhere that's going to use it, and this humanistic transformation is a part of it. So super interesting example from a real life use case. Fear of sharing the data to be judged. So fear from judgment. So once we have all of this well sorted out, we prioritize it, and everyone gets votes and votes on a specific cluster, and we can quickly see, okay, for this use case, these are the priorities, these are the things that we need to tackle from the beginning, as these are the things that if they get solved, the business will be so happy. And having that first victory is a part of this. Right. We don't need to delve into this a lot. It's just to mention that business value is filled by the business. We are just driving the initiative, facilitating all the stakeholders to express their opinions, right? So don't worry so much on the specific use case here now. It is just to illustrate that if IT is driving it and IT can facilitate the workshop and bring the people from the business, pretty much the entire use case is or the business case is going to be filled and built by business itself. Right, and how do we get them to go that far? We use two artifacts. One is a data business case card. Again, no need to screenshot. You have this as part of the starter kit that is available here today. What is important once again is that this is filled by the business. We are just driving it, right? We are asking the questions and making sure that with those questions, we extract the right level of abstraction or complexity. Right, so remember that we are moving from centralized data to distributed data in data products. So we need to identify what domains exist in the organization and how to segregate them and their data products as well. If you cannot read the image, don't worry, that's called anonymization, it's on purpose. It's just to illustrate that in under 1 hour, the business can, as a group, showcase the entire storyline of what they want to achieve, and we'll section it for you and say, yes, we could divide this in 3 domains, yes, because 3 different people are responsible for this, and all of a sudden things start to happen. So in this case, we had a primary domain and 2 subdomains, and afterwards we divided it further 2 data products. Once again, hopefully that's now readable, but you can recognize the hexagon, which usually symbolizes a data product. So they segregated and they said, yes, if we would do a proof of value, this would be the first thing to try out, and this would prove the value for the business. So from here, we could only scale. Perfect. That's exactly what we are looking for. So we now know which domains we have inside a department, a process, an area of interest. We know the subdomains. We know which data products. And how do we get about these data products? Once again, you get this as a kit. And this is very useful because as we start to hand these out and they get to stand up, go to a wall, look at this drawing and go, okay, the name of my data product. Oh, who's going to own this? What does it mean to own it? That's usually a session. What's the purpose? You get that in a data product, you have all of these things that you need to think about. They are already here for you to think about. And I call your attention for how useful this is from your initiative's perspective when you say, I'm going to do a first phase. Which use case am I going to choose? And what are the capabilities that I need from my platform, a minimum viable platform, if you will, so that I can keep costs low without going full-fledged, but I can prove that this is going to work and this is going to scale. So you can see there you have output ports and you have processing. Is it a batch? Is it streaming? Output ports, are they just tables? Are we talking about APIs? what are we talking about and at which speed. This tells me a lot from the perspective of I can still add this use case to my first phase, or this will involve a lot of technological clustering that I don't want for my first phase. My first phase is simple. I can fit a couple of use cases in them. And this third one that you really want means an upgrade of the foundation that supports these use cases. And this will already be too large. So incredibly useful, incredibly to the point to have these canvases. The impact that you already saw is also filled by them, so the fail to scale. And here I call the attention to the facilitation. So when you are running these workshops, and again, you can achieve this in 2-3 days, all of this in 2-3 days, when you are facilitating this, you guide and steer the complexity and the abstraction. So you ask the question, so what is the problem? Why can't I automate it? Oh, yeah, it's too complex. Right, but hey, I have a team of engineers. They could automate it. All of this are questions that remove that abstraction of, yeah, you can't because you need to download the data because, and finally you get to the, you cannot scale. You can understand one process and code it. You can automate this process, but we have so many. And at one point, no single human would go, I understand all of this. I have 5 PhDs by now. So in the end, we steer the conversation to get to a level of abstraction that is in fact business language. You cannot do it because you cannot scale. And this is incredibly important. As you're facilitating this, don't just take everything that comes your way. Try to steer a little bit so that you get the right level of abstraction and complexity. Right. Then we get votes out of this. We're still in the inhibitors. Everyone gets to vote. We start to center. We start to see what's more important, basically, and that kind of drives your roadmap. So we see that there that upskilling and finding the right expertise is very important to give even the first step of the first phase. And if we look at our first preliminary roadmap, this is exactly what you will find. So there's this skill gap analysis, and this is a roadmap exclusively for training calendars. Right. In fact, that's not all that we need. We need a roadmap for all the axes that we saw before, right? So we need the business case, we need the roadmap on all axes. Finally, once you get to this stage, that you have all that information and you are already organizing the phases of your roadmap, you, after those 2-3 days, left with 4 things. So you have the roadmap, good. You have a business case. You have a lot of arguments to move your initiative forward, and you have a lot of people backing you up. And that's good from any standpoint, no matter who the stakeholder is. If you hear 5 times in the elevator, in the corridor that, hey, this is going to change the way we work, hey, this is going to be very beneficial for the strategy of the company, you're on the road to approve the initiative. Right, so you're left with these 4 things. And how's this for a business case and a financial impact? This is from the same case we poked what are the consequences of this? Oh yeah, you can miss an entire research cycle. Great. What does it mean? I missed it. So how long is a cycle? A cycle is 1 year. All right, I missed 1 year. Now what? See you next year. Oh no! If the cycle is not complete and you don't put those products out, we're talking about millions in losses. Or the opportunity cost. Like we're talking about multi-million by missing a research cycle. That sounds consequential. Of course it is consequential. So what do you do today? How do you deal with this today? Well, today we just duplicate it. We do it more than once. And at least we are sure that even if one fails, the other one can keep going. Okay, failing due to bad planning, due to not having all of the data available. Mind you, this is the failure we are talking about. Okay, duplicating this, how much does it cost? About $1 million. So you proactively, willingly spend 1 million so that you're not going to lose multi-millions. Makes perfect sense to me. But if I can tell you that with a small investment, way under $1 million, by the way, we can move into, we have a structured planning and we have a sound trust in that planning, that we don't need to duplicate it and we don't need to miss any research cycles. The business case is done. And mind you that this business case, these gains, they are for two use cases, two tiny use cases. And this initial investment is for a foundational platform plus two business cases. The other business cases already have the foundation. If they don't exceed the boundaries of that MVP, we don't need more development on the foundation to keep adding use cases and bringing even more value. So it's usually a no-brainer at this point, but let's summarize it, how we get here. So we involve the business in workshops, talking about 2 days, and that's very realistic if you are just starting out. We have checklists for starting, what we need to have ready before workshopping. Cannot workshop tomorrow. There are a couple of things that needs to be ready. We have a checklist for that. And 6 axes to cover that we just saw. So we initially spoke about those 4 axes. This is the full global 6 things, let's say, that you cover during those 2 days of workshops that map perfectly to those 4. Okay, they're just a different granularity. Okay, we're not talking about different things. So the context, the insights, the problems, the business cases from the business, the data framework, so how things are going to be managed, read it, governance, if you will, skill gap analysis, and the technological gap analysis as well. So when we look at technical capability is what we're going to need there. And finally, a roadmap, always twofold: roadmap for the entire initiative and the roadmap for the very first phase. Right. And going then into lessons from the field. So what not to do? And this is a little bit the opposite, right? No business involvement. Now, this is tragic. We have seen it time and time again. We have a real life example from a company that invested about $1 million over the course of a year and a half on a data platform that nobody was using. Not even nobody was using it in the business, even the data team was not using it. So IT initiatives that crash and burn, first thing to do wrong, no business involvement. And we're talking about anything business, right? Now you see there under those icons what this can, when this can be a problem. And it can be a problem from start to execution to delivery. The most tragic is delivery. You build things for a year and a half, nobody's interested in it. How disappointing is it? And I can tell you, it was a great platform. It was not a matter of failing technically. It was a matter of failing the PR, the awareness, the change management side of things. This is extremely important. The second one that we see far too often is the wrong use case selection. And here we're talking about going too big, going too small, or going with something that is just perfect but has little value. So we want to do something that is of medium complexity and provides a lot of value. And we can see this usually from those business cases, from those sheets, from those cards. So it is absolutely important to choose the right use case to stamp, to validate the initiative, right? So finally, ignoring change. This is always present. I think I said it already 2,000 times. So having, sorry about those descriptions. I can see there's something wrong with the slide, but it's okay. So ignoring change, we're talking about change management, we're talking about people, and we're talking about making sure that things are well received, right? So don't ignore, it is not just a skill gap analysis, it is not just a training calendar. We're really talking about the buy-in of everyone in the business moving forward. Huh? And then not involving outside help. And this is, it doesn't need to be external, it needs to be outside of IT. So whenever you are stuck, okay, I cannot facilitate workshops. Can you find someone that does? Is it an external company? Is it someone else in the company? Is it someone from the business? It could be, but you likely will need help from others outside of the initiative. And this is, once again, really, really important. And it can blow up at different points in time. Once again, the most tragic is always blowing up after delivery. Right, so all of this is great. Let me just take a look at questions. How could we improve the... Sorry, I could not see all of the questions. So how could we improve the awareness of people about the value that a data platform can bring? How could we motivate people to actually use it? Right. The answer to this is really involve them from the start. And I know it sounds maybe too basic, and we do this in several ways. One way is this PR that we were discussing. So looking about awareness sessions, talking about making constant newsletters. I'd say that go out once every 2 weeks, saying, "Hey, this is what we achieved in our data platform in the last 2 weeks or this month. Hey, come to our awareness session here and there. Ask your questions." All of this awareness is constant feedback, because every time that you host one of these sessions, you can guarantee that there'll be questions of people saying, "Ah, yes, have you considered this?" And it's not even about did you consider or did you not. It is about my voice was heard. And if my voice was heard, I like this already because I was taken into account. So if you did not consider it and you say it's on the roadmap, but it's not our most urgent issue, we will get there eventually. It is on the roadmap, we'll get there. It is an important thing to tackle. Great idea that I just had. So the thing is, getting this buy-in is really a humanistic process. And my advice, our advice as a company, because we do this so often, involve them from the beginning. When they are on around the board, putting those post-its, even if finally nobody votes on my post-it, everybody was part of the discussion. And everybody discussed my post-it and said, "Oh yeah, no, this is a great idea." But for later we need to consider this. "Oh yeah, you're right. Yeah, we need to focus on this first." If you don't hear it from your own people, from your own colleagues, if your voice wasn't heard, you're just going to say at the coffee corner, "Yeah, okay, they didn't even take this governance into account." You don't have a friend anymore in this case. I'll go back to the questions in a minute, and I'll go over the rest. Just so that we finish on time, we are just under 5 minutes. So taking a closer look on how to start, we have the buy-in start kit. You can download this directly here. You have a before starting checklist. So before starting the workshops, let's say, the initiative, you have the data product opportunity canvas, the business case card, the roadmap template that we've seen today, the data products myth buster card. So these are all the arguments or all the replies you should give if you go decentralized and someone says, "Oh yeah, this will be too complex." No, actually the cost comes down because of this reason. "Oh, I will need to hire many engineers." No, you can have a pool of engineers and you can source from them and they can work on different data products because they are of the same template, they are of the same kind, they are governed by the same principles. So you can pretty much exchange. Okay, you start to build the convincing. So it's not always easy to fight these arguments at the lunch table. So You have the Mythbuster card prepared by us. This is really based on real life questions that we have received across time. Huh? So these are not theoretical in any way. Then the ROI calculation sheet, I had predicted on spending 5 minutes going around it and show you how to parameterize it. It's okay. We are just 5 minutes under, so we can skip it and focus in at the questions. It's an Excel sheet. Should be pretty standard. And then the before submission checklist. This is before submitting your initiative for budget release approval. All right, so you have all the arguments. You have a sound offer, a sound valuable proposition, a sound investment proposal. So that's what we need by before submission checklist, and all of this is available in the kit today. I won't go into the ROI calculation sheet then, and let's focus on Q&A then. Right, involve them from the beginning and listen to the feedback. That sounds like great. Thank you, Omar. I appreciate it. Does this centralized data platform normally lead to invest in more headcount at the beginning as we need more DADs? Well, not exactly. And this is a good example, and you can find the answer to this. Well, I think I just covered it accidentally, right? It is not really true. You can have a pool of engineers that you go from one side to the other, and especially if things are initially and your data products are of low complexity, you might not need a dedicated engineer full time around the data product. That's not really something we have. I can tell you that in a few months, a team of about 8 can easily build 30 data products. This is not a number pulled out. This is really a number from a real life situation from a customer that is doing a data product. So it is a bit of a misconception. You don't need to distribute. I mean, if you have 50 data products, you don't need 50 data engineers. Okay, you can have a pool that you rotate. Right. So this one I covered already. Are you Databricks only or work with Snowflake, Azure? It says yes. All right, it's already answered. Indeed, we work with Snowflake, Databricks, etc., Fabric, Azure, GCP, AWS, and of course, Databricks anywhere. Databricks as a service in Azure or in AWS or wherever. It doesn't really change much. It's a different piece of that puzzle, and we mentioned we wouldn't really dive into those architectures. But those are pretty much plug and play. We have customers that say, I want to do dbt. We have customers that say, I want to do Data Factory. Fine by us, right? We want to make sure that it's effective and it succeeds. Databricks, I can tell you that it is the geekiest of the platforms, right? It is the most technical of the platforms. When you set it up, you need to think about compute power and storage. Databricks doesn't have any storage. It relies on data lakes that you have to set up before you connect them. So all of this is a little bit less front forward than I created a Snowflake account. Everything's ready, right? Right. I don't think I'm missing anything, but if I am, apologies, and I will get back definitely. So I see 4 questions here, and I think I am reading all of the questions. So that should be a wrap. So thank you very much for this pleasant morning. We have done. We still have 1 minute. We have covered everything in just the right time. Feel free to reach out to us via any of the channels. We will reply. That's a guarantee in whatever we can help. It doesn't need to be that complex. It doesn't need to be that large, that big, or that involving. It can just be a short advisory session. Whatever you need, we are here for you. Thank you very much, and have a pleasant day.